Hello viewers and welcome to another chapter of reading. Before I begin, I would like to address that today is known as leap year, so I guess happy leap year. I don't know how else to properly address the day, so again, happy leap year. Okay, on to the chapter, shall we? Chapter 23, The Yule Ball. Despite the very heavy load of homework that the fourth years had been given for the holidays, Harry was in no mood to work when term ended, and spent the week leading up to Christmas enjoying himself as fully as possible and with everyone else. Gryffindor Tower was hardly less crowded now than during term time. It seemed to have shrunk slightly, too, as its inhabitants were being so much rowdier than usual. Fred and George had a great success with their canary creams, and for the first couple of days of the holidays, people kept bursting into feathers all over the place. Before long, however, all of the Gryffindors had learned to treat food anybody else offered them with extreme caution, in case it had a canary cream concealed in the center. And George confided to Harry that he and Fred were now working on developing something else. Harry made a mental note never to accept so much as a crisp from Fred and George in the future. He still hadn't forgotten Dudley and the ton toffee. That was a good chapter. Snow was falling thickly upon the castle and its grounds now. The pale blue Beauxbaton carriage looked like a large, chilly, frosted pumpkin next to the iced gingerbread house that was Hagrid's cabin. An iced gingerbread house. That sounds tasty. While the Durmstrang ship's portholes were glazed with ice, the rigging white with frost. The house elves down in the kitchen were outdoing themselves with a series of rich, warming stews and savory puddings. Oh, I could go for some cottage pie right now. And only Lord Delacour seemed to be able to find anything to complain about. It is too heavy, all this Hogwarts food, they heard her saying grumpily as they left the great hall behind her one evening, Ron sulking behind Harry, keen now to be spotted by horror. I will not fit into my dress robes. Oh, that's a tragedy. Hermione snapped as Fleur went out into the entrance hall. She really thinks a lot of herself, that one, doesn't she? Okay, Hermione, we know you don't like Fleur, but I can understand why Fleur would be worried. She's trying to maintain her physique, and she's not used to this foreign food as much as you are. So, maybe cut her a bit of slack, Hermione. Hermione, who are you going to the ball with? Said Ron. He kept spraying this question on her, hoping to startle her into a response by asking her when she least expected it. However, Hermione merely frowned and said, I'm not telling you. Don't make fun of me. You'll just make fun of me. You're joking, Weasley, said Malfoy behind them. You're not telling me someone asked that to the ball, not the law-murdered mudblood. Harry and Ron both looked around, but Hermione said loudly, waving somebody over Malfoy's shoulder. Hello, Professor Moody. Malfoy went pale and jumped backward, looking wildly around for Moody, but he was still up at the staff stable finishing his stew. Twitching is so fine, don't you, Malfoy? Said Hermione, scathingly, and Harry and Ron went up the marble staircase laughing heartily. That was good. Hermione, said Ron, looking sideways at her son with frowning. Her teeth. Yes. I have a slight dental pain here. Not very fun. But nonetheless, I am reading this chapter for you guys. Moving on. What about them? He said. Well, they're different. I've just noticed. Of course they are. Do you expect me to keep those fangs mouthful I gave me? No. I mean, they're different to how they were before he put that hex on you. They're all straight and normal sized. Hermione suddenly smiled very mischievously, and Harry noticed it too. It was a very different smile from the one he had remembered. Well, when I went up to Madame Pomfrey to get them shrunk, she held up a mirror and told me to stop her when they were back to how they normally were, she said. And I just let her carry on a bit. She smiled even more widely. Mom and Dad won't be too pleased. I've been trying to persuade them to let me shrink them for ages. But they wanted me to carry on with my braces. You know, they're dentists. They just don't think teeth and magic should... Look! Hedwig's back! Ron's tiny was twittering madly on top of the icicle-blinded banisters, the scroll of parchment tied to his leg. People passing him pointing and laughing, and a group of third year girls paused and said, "Oh, look at the weenie owl! Isn't he cute?" "Stupid little feathery kit!" Ron hissed, hurrying up the stairs and snatching up Hedwig. "You bring letters to the addressee! Don't hang around, show it off!" Hedwig hooted happily, his head protruding over Ron's fist. All the third year girls all looked very shocked. Yeah, I kind of would too. "Clear off!" Ron snapped at them, waving the fist holding Hedwig, who hooted more happily than ever as he soared through the air. "Here, take us, Harry," Ron added in an undertone as the third year girls scuttled away looking scandalized. He pulled Sirius's reply off of Hedwig's leg. Harry pocketed, and they hurried back to the Gryffindor Tower to read it. Everyone in the Gryffindor common room was much too busy in wedding more holidays seemed to observe what anyone else was up to. Harry, Ron, and Hermione sat apart from everyone else by a dark window that was gradually filling up with snow, and Harry read out. "Dear Harry, congratulations on getting past the Horntail. Whoever put your name in the goblin shouldn't be feeling too happy right now. I was going to suggest a conjunctivitis curse, as the dragon's eyes are its weakest point." That's what Crumb did," Hermione whispered. "But your way was better. I'm impressed. Don't get complacent, though, Harry. You've only done one task. Whoever put you in the tournament's got plenty of more opportunity if they're trying to hurt you. Keep your eyes open, particularly when the person we discussed is around. And concentrate on keeping yourself out of trouble. Keep in touch. I still want to hear about anything unusual. Serious." "He sounds exactly like Moody," Harry said quietly, tucking the letter inside his robes. "Constant vigilance! You'd think I'd walk around with my eyes shut, painting off the walls." "But he's right, Harry," said Hermione. "You have still got 2 more tasks to do. Really ought to have a look at the egg, and start working out what it means." "Hermione, he's got H's!" snapped Ron. "What's a game of chess, Harry?" "Okay," said Harry. Then spotting the look on Hermione's face, he said, "Come on. How am I supposed to concentrate with all this noise going on? I won't even be able to hear the egg over this lot." "Oh, I suppose not," She sighed and she sat down to watch their chess match, which culminated in an exciting checkmate of Ron's, involving a couple of recklessly brave pawns and a very violent bishop. Oh, how I wish Wizard's chess was real. I mean, don't get me wrong, it kinda is in the Muggle world. But at the same time, the Muggle world is like, the Muggle world version is like a typical chessboard with typical chess pieces. I want pieces that actually move. Moving on. Harry looked very suddenly on Christmas Day, wondering what caused his abrupt return to consciousness. He opened his eyes and saw something with very large, round, green eyes staring at him in the darkness, so close they were almost nose to nose. "Dobby!" Harry yelled, scrambling the elf away from the elf so fast he almost fell out of bed. "Don't do that!" "Dobby is sorry, sir," squeaked Dobby, anxiously jumping backward with his long fingers over his mouth. "Dobby is only wanting to wish Harry Potter Merry Christmas and bring him a present, sir. Dobby did say Dobby could come and see him sometimes, sir." "It's okay," said Harry, still breathing faster than usual, while his heart rate returned to normal. Just prod me or something in the future, alright? Don't bend over me like that." Harry pulled back the curtains around his four-poster, took his glasses from his bedside table, and put them on. His yell had awoken Ron, Seamus, Dean, and Neville. All of them were peering through the gaps in their own hangings, heavy-eyed and tousled-haired. "Someone attacking you, Harry?" Seamus asked sleepily. "No, it's just Dobby," Harry muttered. "Go back to sleep." "Nah. Presents!" said Seamus, spawning a large pile at the foot of his bed. Ron, Dean, and Neville decided that now they were awake, they might as well get down to present opening too. Yeah, I would open my presents too, I'm not gonna lie. Harry turned back next to Dobby, who was now standing nervously next to Harry's bed, still looking worried that he had upset Harry. There was a Christmas bauble tied to the loop on top of his tea cozy. "Can Dobby give Harry Potter his present?" he squeaked tightly. "Of course he can," said Harry. "I've got something for you too." It was a lie. He hadn't bought anything for Dobby at all, but he quickly opened his trunk and pulled out a particularly knobby rolled-up pair of socks. They were his oldest and foulest, mustard yellow, and had once gone to Uncle Bert. The reason they were extra knobbly was that Harry had been using them to cushion his sneakoscope for over a year now. He pulled out the sneakoscope and handed the socks to Dobby, saying, "Sorry I forgot to wrap them." But Dobby was utterly delighted. "Socks are Dobby's favorite clothes, sir," he said, rubbing off his old ones and pulling on Uncle Vernon's. "I have 7 now, sir. Sir," he said, his eyes widening, having pulled both the socks up to his highest extent so that they reached the bottom of his shorts. "I had made a mistake in the shop, Harry Potter. They were giving you in 2 at a time." No, Harry, how come you didn't spot that?" said Ron, reading from his own bed, which was now strewn with wrapping paper. "Tell you what, Dobby, here you go. Take these 2, and you can mix them up properly. And here's your sweater." He threw Dobby a pair of violet socks he had just unwrapped, and the hand of the sweater Mrs. Weasley had sent. Dobby looked quite overwhelmed. "Sir, it's very kind," he squeaked, his eyes brimming with tears again, bowing deeply to Ron. "Dobby knew Sir must be a great wizard, for he is Harry Potter's greatest said Ron, who had gone slightly pink around the ears, though he looked rather pleased all the same. Wow, Harry! He had just opened Harry's present, a Tudley cannon hat. Cool! He jammed it onto his head, where it clashed horribly with his hair. Oh. Considering he's ginger-haired, yeah, I could see how that would be a disaster. Dobby now handed Harry a small package, which turned out to be socks. Dobby is making them himself, sir, the elf said happily. Dobby is buying them all out of his wages, sir. The left sock was bright red and had a pattern of broomsticks upon it. The right sock was green with the pattern of snitches. They're really well. Thanks, Dobby, said Harry. And he pulled them on, causing Dobby's eyes to leak with happiness again. Dobby must go now, sir. We are making Christmas dinner in the kitchen, said Dobby, and he hurried out of the dormitory, waving goodbye to Ron and the others as he passed. Harry's other presents were much more satisfactory than Dobby's odd socks, with the obvious exception of the Dursleys, which consisted of a single tissue, an all-time low. Harry supposed they too were remembering the ton coffee. Hermione had given Harry a book called Quidditch Teams of Britain and Ireland. I want that book. That sounds like it'd be an interesting read. Ron, a bulging bag of Dunbombs. Sirius, a handy penknife with attachments to unlock any lock and undo any knot. Now that sounds useful. And Hagrid, a vast box of sweets including all of Harry's favorites. Very lots of flavor beans, chocolate frogs, Gerbil's best blowing gum. Hey, that becomes important later. Much later, but still. And fizzing Whizbees. There was also, of course, Mrs. Weasley's usual package, including a new sweater, green with a picture of a dragon on it. Harry supposed Charlie had told her about the horntail. I wouldn't put it by him. And a large quantity of homemade mince pies. Those sound good. Harry and Ron met up with Hermione in the common room, and they moved down to breakfast together. They spent most of their morning in Gryffindor Tower, where everyone was enjoying their presents, then returned to the Great Hall for a magnificent lunch, which included at least 100 turkeys and Christmas pudding and large piles of Cribbage's Wizarding crackers. Again, I have none to pull open right now, but maybe sometime in the future I will. They went out onto the grounds in the afternoon. The snow was untouched except for the deep channels made by Durmstrang and Beauxbaton students on their way up to the castle. Hermione chose to watch Harry and the Weasley snowball fight rather than join in, and at 5 o'clock she said she was going back upstairs to get ready for the ball. What, you need 3 hours? Said Ron, looking at her incredulously and paying for his lapse in concentration when a large snowball, thrown by George, hit him hard in the side of the head. Oh, Hermione, I love how you can plan ahead. But I can also see the logic in this because it will probably take me a while to get ready how I want to be ready too. So, no judgment here. There was no Christmas tea today. Oh, I like tea. As the ball included a feast. So at 7 o'clock, when it had become hard to aim properly, the others abandoned their snowball fight and trooped back into the common room. The fat lady was sitting in her frame with her friend Violet from downstairs. Both of them were extremely tipsy. Empty boxes of chocolate liqueurs littering the bottom of the picture. Very nice, that's the one, she giggled when they gave the password, and she ran forward to let them inside. Harry, Ron, Ernestine, and Neville changed into their dress robes in their dormitory, all of them looking very self-conscious, but not as much as Ron, who surveyed himself in the wall mirror in the corner with an appalled look on his face. There was no getting around the fact that his robes looked more like a dress than anything else. In a desperate attempt to make them look more manly, he used a severing charm on the ruff and cuffs. It worked very well. At least he was now lace-free, although he hadn't done a very neat job, and the edges still looked depressingly frayed as the boy set off downstairs. And to quote the film, "I look like my Grandaunt Tessie. I smell like my Grandaunt Tessie." I love that moment in the film. I still can't work out how you two got the best looking girls in the year, muttered Dean. Animal magnetism, said Ron, gloomily pulling stray threads out of his cuffs. The common room looked strange, full of people wearing different colors instead of the usual mass of black. Parvati was waiting for Harry at the foot of the stairs. She looked very pretty indeed, in robes of shocking pink. Bit too bright, but you do you. With her long dark plait braided with gold and gold bracelet glimmering at her wrist, Harry was relieved to see that she wasn't giggling. "You look nice," he said awkwardly. "Thanks," she said. "Padma's going to meet you in the entrance hall," she added to Ron. "Right," said Ron, looking around. "Where's Hermione?" Parvati turned. "Shall we go down then, Harry?" "Okay," said Harry, wishing he could just stay in the common room. Fred winked at Harry as he passed him on the way out of the portrait hole. The entrance hall was packed with the students, too, all milling around for 8 o'clock when the doors to the great hall would be thrown open. Those people who were meeting partners from different houses were edging through the crowd trying to find another. Parvati found her sister, Padma, and led her over to Harry and Ron. "Hi," said Padma, who was looking just as pretty as Parvati in robes of bright turquoise. "Ooh, that's a pretty color." She didn't look too enthusiastic about having Ron as a partner, though. Her dark eyes lingered on the frayed neck and sleeves of his dress robes, and as she looked him up and down. "Hi," said Ron, not looking at her, but staring around at the crowd. "Oh, no." He bent his knees slightly to hide behind Harry because Lord Delacour was passing, looking stunning in robes of silver grey satin, accompanied by the Ravenclaw Quidditch captain, Roger Davies. When they had disappeared, Ron stood straight again and stared over the heads of the crowd. "Where is Hermione?" he said again. A group of Slytherins came up the steps from the dungeon common room. Malfoy was in front. He was wearing dress robes of black velvet with a high collar, which in Harry's opinion made him look like a Vicar. Pansy Parkinson in very frilly robes of pale pink was clutching Malfoy's arm. Crabbe and Goyle were both wearing green. They resembled moss-covered boulders, and neither of them, Harry was pleased to see, had managed to find a partner. The oak front doors opened, and everyone turned to look as the Durmstrang students entered with Professor Karkaroff. Crumb was at the front of the party, accompanied by a pretty girl in blue robes Harry didn't know. You technically know her. Over their heads, he saw that an area of lawn right in front of the castle had been transformed into a sort of grotto full of fairy lights. Oh, that sounds so beautiful. Meaning that hundreds of actual living fairies were sitting in the rose bushes that had been conjured there, and fluttering over the statues of what seemed to be Father Christmas and his reindeer. Then Professor McGonagall's voice called, "Champions, over here, please." Parvati readjusted her bangles, beaming, and she and Harry said, "See you in a minute," to Ron and Padma, and walked forward. The chatting crowd parting to let them through. Professor McGonagall, who was wearing dress robes of red tartan, had arranged okay. Professor McGonagall, who was wearing dress robes of red tartan, had arranged a rather ugly wreath of thistles around the brim of her hat. Told them to wait on one side of the doors while everyone else went inside. They were to enter the Great Hall in procession when the rest of the students had sat down. I love how McGonagall is not afraid to show she's Scottish. Fleur Delacour and Roger Davies stationed themselves nearest to the doors. Davies looked so stunned by his good fortune in having Fleur for a partner that he could barely take his eyes off her. Cedric and Cho were close to Harry, too. He looked away from them so he wouldn't have to talk to them. His eyes fell instead on the girl next to Crumb. His jaw dropped. It was Hermione. But it didn't look like Hermione at all. She had done something with her hair. It was no longer bushy, but sleek and shiny, and twisted up into an elegant knot on at the back of her head. She was wearing robes of a floaty periwinkle blue material, and she was holding herself differently somehow. Or maybe it was merely the absence of the 20 or so books that she usually had slung over her back. She was also smiling, rather nervously, it was true, but the reduction in the size of her front teeth was most noticeable than ever. Harry couldn't understand how he hadn't spotted it before. Okay, there's a bit of a confession here. I rather like the pink dress she wears in the films better than the blue. But at the same time, I would have loved to see the blue come to life in the film. So I'm like a little torn on which version I prefer best. But if I were Hermione, the blue would definitely suit me. I'm not gonna lie. "Hi, Abby," she said. "Hi, Parvati." Parvati was gazing at Hermione in unflattering disbelief. She wasn't the only one either. When the doors to the Great Hall opened, Crumb's fan club from the library stalked past her, and Hermione looked the deepest loathing. Pansy Parkinson gaped at her as she walked by with Malfoy, and even he didn't seem to be able to throw an insult at her. Ron, however, walked right past Hermione without looking at her. Once everyone else was settled in the hall, Professor McGonagall told the champions and their partners to get in line in pairs and to follow her. They did so, and everyone in the Great Hall applauded as they entered and started walking up toward a large round table at the top of the hall, where the judges were sitting. The walls of the hall had all been covered in sparkling silver frost, with hundreds of garlands of mistletoe and ivy crossing the starry black ceiling. The house tables had vanished. Instead, there were about 100 smaller lantern ones, each seating about a dozen people. Oh, that just sounds so heavenly. It could be a wedding venue. Like, that just sounds so beautiful. I know, they show it in the films, but it's just somehow more magical to envision it in your head, and it sounds like it would be a perfect wedding venue. Moving on. Harry concentrated on not tripping over his feet. Parvati seemed to be enjoying herself. She was beaming around at everybody, steering Harry so forcefully that he felt as though he were a show dog she was putting through its paces. He caught sight of Ron and Padma as he neared the top table. Ron was watching Hermione pass with narrowed eyes. Padma was looking sulky. Dumbledore smiled happily as the champions approached the top table, but Karkaroff wore an expression remarkably like Ron's as he watched Krum and Hermione draw nearer. Little Bagman, tonight in robes of bright purple with large yellow stars. In theory that would work, but at the same time it depends on the type of purple and yellow. So it has to be one of those, you have to be careful which ones you use. Moving on, was clapping enthusiastically as any of the students and Madame Maxime, who had changed her usual uniform of black satin for a flowing gown of lavender silk. Oh, I wish we saw that in the films. It sounds so beautiful. Okay, could argue we kind of did, but come on. Flowing gown of lavender silk. Oh, that sounds heavenly. Moving on. Was applauding them politely, but Mr. Crouch, Harry suddenly realized, was not there. The fifth seat at the table was occupied by Percy Weasley. When the champions and their partners reached the table, Percy drew out the empty chair beside him, staring pointedly at Harry. Harry took the hint and sat down next to Percy, who was wearing brand new navy blue dress robes, and an expression of such smugness that Harry thought it ought to be fined. Oh, Harry. I've been promoted, Percy said before Harry could even ask. And from his tone he might have been announcing his election as supreme ruler of the universe. I'm now Mr. Crouch's personal assistant, and I'm here representing him. Why didn't he come? Harry asked. He wasn't looking forward to being lectured on cauldron bottoms all through dinner. I wouldn't either, honestly. And I'm afraid to say Mr. Crouch isn't well. Not well at all. Hasn't been right since the World Cup. Hardly surprising. Overworked. He's not as young as he was, though still quite brilliant, of course. The mind remains as great as it ever was. But the World Cup was a fiasco for the whole ministry. And then Mr. Crouch suffered a huge personal shock with the misbehavior of that house elf of his. Blinky, or whatever she was called. Winky, in case you guys are wondering. Naturally, he dismissed her immediately afterward. But, well, as I say, he's getting on. He needs looking after. And I think he's found a definite job in his home comfort since she left. And then we had the tournament to arrange, and the aftermath of the cup to deal with. That revolting Skeeter woman buzzing around. No, poor man, he's having a well-earned quiet Christmas. I'm just glad he knew he had someone he could rely upon to take his place. Percy, Harry wanted very much to ask whether Mr. Crouch had stopped calling Percy Weatherby yet, but resisted the temptation. I would. There was no food as of yet on the glittering golden plates, but small menus were lined in front of each of them. Harry picked it up uncertainly, looked around. There were no waiters. Dumbledore, however, carefully looked down at his own menu, then said very clearly to his plate, "Pork chops." Mmm. Yum. And pork chops appeared. Getting the idea, the rest of the table placed their orders with their plates too. Okay, now this is service. Harry glanced up to see how Hermione felt about this new and more complicated method of dining. Surely it meant plenty of extra work for the house elves. But for once, Hermione didn't seem to be thinking about SPEW. She was deep in talk with Victor Crumb and hardly seemed to notice what she was eating. I kind of would notice, actually, but that's probably due to me having allergies, so... It now occurred to Harry that he had never actually heard Crumb speak before, but he was certainly talking now, and very enthusiastically at that. Well, we've had a castle too. Not as big as this, not as comfortable. I am thinking, he was telling Hermione, we've had just both those, and the fires are lit only for magical purposes. But we have grounds larger than even than these. Though in winter we have very little daylight, so we found not enjoying them. But in summer we found flying every day, over the lakes and the mountains. No, no, Victor, said Karkaroff with a laugh that didn't reach his cold eyes. Don't go giving away everything else now, or your charming friend will know exactly where to find us. Dumbledore smiled, his eyes twinkling. Igor, all this secrecy. One would almost think you didn't want visitors. Well, Dumbledore, said Karkaroff, displaying his yellowing teeth to their fullest extent. We are all protective of our private domains, are we not? Do we not jealously guard the halls of learning that have been entrusted to us? Are we not right to be proud that we alone know our school's secrets, and the right to protect them? Oh, I would never dream of assuming I know all of Hogwarts' secrets, Igor, said Dumbledore amicably. Only this morning, for instance, I took a wrong turning on the way to the bathroom and found myself in a beautifully proportioned room I had never seen before, containing a really magnificent collection of charming chamber pots. When I went back to investigate more closely, I discovered that the room had vanished. But I must keep an eye out for it. Possibly it is only accessible at 5:30 in the morning, or it may only appear in the courtroom, or when the seeker has an exceptionally full bladder. I think I know what room he's talking about. Do any of you? Harry snorted into his plate of goulash. Percy frowned, but Harry could have sworn Dumbledore had given him a very small wink. Meanwhile, Lord Delacour was criticizing the Hogwarts decorations to Roger Davies. This is nothing, she said dismissively, looking round at the sparkling walls of the great hall. At the possible baton, we have ice sculptures all around the dining chamber at Christmas. They do not melt, of course. They are like old statues of diamond, glittering around the place. And the food is supremely superb. And we have chairs of goodness. We have choirs of goodness to serenade us after we eat. We have none of this ugly armor in the old, and if a Portuguese ever entered into Bobaton, it would certainly be expelled like that. She slammed her hand onto the table impatiently. And that, I must confess, sounds really, 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 really beautiful for her. We need to know more about Bobaton. Roger Davies was watching her talk with a very dazed look on his face, and he kept missing his mouth with his fork. Harry had the impression that Davies was too busy staring at her to take in the words she was saying. Absolutely right, he said quickly, swapping his own hand down on the table in imitation of her. Like that. Yeah. Harry looked around the hall. Hagrid was sitting at one of the other staff tables. He was back in his horrible hairy brown suit and gazing up the top table. Harry saw him give a small wave, and looking around, saw Madame Maxime return it her opals glittering in the candlelight. Hermione was now teaching Crumb to say her name properly. He kept calling her Hermione. Hermione, she said slowly and clearly. Hermione. Close enough, she said, catching Harry's eyes and grinning. I always preferred Hermione. It's a little more easier to say. The influence of the films has me on that. But yes, for those who are wondering, it is actually pronounced Hermione. Moving on. When all the food had been consumed, Dumbledore stood up and asked the students to do the same. Then with a wave of his wand, all the tables zoomed back along the walls, leaving the floor clear, and then he conjured a raised platform into existence along the right wall. A set of drums, several guitars, a lute, a cello, and some bagpipes were set upon it. The weird sisters now trooped up onto the stage, wild to wildly enthusiastic applause. They were all extremely hairy and dressed in black robes that had artfully ripped and torn. They picked up their instruments, and Harry, who had been so interested in watching them that he had almost forgotten what was coming, suddenly he realized that the lanterns on all the other tables had gone out, and that the other champions and their partners were standing up. Come on, Parvati, we're supposed to dance. Harry tripped over his dress robes as he stood up. The weird sisters struck up a slow, mournful tune.
Why do dermatologists?
This one's going out to all the lovers out there. Hold each other tight and keep each other warm. And dance.
Harry walked on to the brightly lit dance floor, carefully avoiding catching anyone's eye. He could see Seamus and Dean waving at him and snickering. At next moment, Parvati had seized his hands, placed one around her waist, and was holding the other tightly in hers. It wasn't as bad as it could have been, Harry thought. Revolving slowly on the spot, Parvati was staring. He kept his eyes fixed over the heads of the watching people, and soon many of them, too, had come onto the dance floor, so that the champions were no longer the center of the attention. Neville and Ginny were dancing nearby. You could see Ginny wincing frequently as Neville trod on her feet, and Dumbledore was waltzing with Madame Maxime. He was so dwarfed by her that the top of his pointed hat barely tickled her chin. However, she moved very gracefully for a woman so large. Mad-Eye Moody, who was doing an extremely ungainly two-step with Professor Cintra, who was nervously avoiding his wooden leg. Nice socks, Potter, Moody growled as he passed his magical eyes staring through Harry's froze. Oh, yeah. Don't be the house opener to them for me, Harry said, grinning. You're so creepy, Parvati whispered as Moody clunked away. Don't think that I should be allowed. Harry heard the final quavering note of the bagpipe with relief. The weird sister stopped playing. Applause filled the hall once more, and Harry let go of Parvati at once. Let's sit down, shall we? No, but this is a really good one. Parvati said as the weird sister struck up a new song, which was much faster.
From Disney Animation.
Toxic therapy from your...
Buddy, you gotta help us up, Ross. Together we can do this thing. Are you ready? Are you ready? You ride like a hero. I'm learning to rock and roll.
No, I don't like it, Harry whined, and he led her away from the dance floor, past Fred and Angelina, who were dancing so exuberantly that people around them were backing away in fear of injury, and over to the table where Ron and Padma were sitting. How's it going? Harry asked Ron, sitting down and opening a bottle of butterbeer. Ron didn't answer. He was worrying at Hermione and Crumb, who were dancing nearby. Padma was sitting with her arms and legs crossed, one foot jiggling in time to the music. Every now and then she grew a disgruntled look at Ron, who was completely ignoring her. You could at least talk to her and have a conversation, Ron. Parvati sat down on Harry's other side, crossed her arms and legs too. Within minutes, was asked to dance by a boy from Bobaton. You don't mind, do you, Harry? Parvati said. What? Said Harry, who was now watching Toe and Tedger. Oh, never mind, said Parvati, and she went off with the boy from Bobaton. When the song ended, she did not return. Hermione came over and sat down in Parvati's empty chair. She was a bit pink in the face from dancing. Hi, said Harry. Ron didn't say anything. It's hot, isn't it? Said Hermione, fanning herself with her hand. Victor's just gone to get some drinks. Ron gave her a withering look. Victor, he said. Hasn't he asked you to call him Vicky yet? Hermione looked at him in surprise. What's up with you? She said. If you don't know, Ron said scathingly, I'm not going to tell you. Hermione stared at him, then at Harry, who shrugged. Ron, what? He's from Durmstrang, spat Ron. He's competing against Harry. Against Hogwarts. You... Ron was obviously casting around for words strong enough to describe Hermione's crime. Fraternizing with the enemy, that's what you're doing. Hermione's mouth fell open. Don't be so stupid, she said after a moment. The enemy! Honestly, who was the one who was all excited when they saw him arrive? Who was the one who wanted his autograph? Who's got a model of him up in their dormitory? Ron chose to ignore this. I suppose he asked you to come with him while you were both in the library? Yes, he did, said Hermione, the pink patches on her cheeks glowing more brightly. So what? What happened was trying to get him to join S-P-E-E-W, were you? No, I wasn't. If you really want to know, he said he had been coming up to the library every day to try and talk to me, but he hadn't been able to pluck up the courage. Hermione said this very quickly and blushed so deeply that she was the same color as Parvati's robes. Yeah, well, that's his story, said Ron acidly. And what's that supposed to mean? Obvious, isn't it? He's Karkaroff's student, isn't he? He knows who you're hanging around with. He's just trying to get closer to Harry, get inside information on him, or get near enough to jinx him. Hermione looked as though Ron had slapped her. When she spoke, her voice quivered. For your information, he hasn't asked me one single thing about Harry. Not one! Ron changed tack at the speed of light. Then he's hoping you'll find out what his egg means. I suppose you've been putting your heads together during those cozy little library sections. I never help him work out the egg, said Hermione, looking outraged. Never! How could you say something like that? I want Harry to win the tournament. Harry knows that, don't you, Harry? You've got a funny way of showing it, sneered Ron. This whole tournament's supposed to be about getting to know foreign wizards and making friends with them, said Hermione hotly. No, it isn't, shouted Ron. It's about winning. People were staring at them. Ron, Harry said quietly, I haven't got a problem with Hermione coming with Crumb. But Ron ignored Harry too. Why don't you go and find Vicky? We're wondering where you are, said Ron. Don't call him Vicky! Hermione jumped to her feet and stormed off across the dance floor, disappearing into the crowd. Ron watched her go with a mixture of anger and satisfaction on her face. Aren't you going to ask me to dance at all? Padma asked him. No, said Ron, still glaring at Hermione. Fine, snapped Padma, and she got up and went to join Parvati and the boba tomboy, who conjured up one of his friends to join them so fast, Harry could have sworn he had zoomed him there by a summoning charm. That is Hermione, said a voice. Crumb had just arrived at their table, clutching two butterbeers. No idea, said Ron mullishly, looking up at him. Lost her, have you? Ron was looking surly again. But if you see her, tell her I have drinks, he said, and he slouched off. Make friends with Victor Crumb, have you, Ron? Percy had bustled over, rubbing his hands together, looking extremely pompous. Excellent. That's the whole point. You know, international magical cooperation. To Harry's displeasure, Percy now took Padma's vacated seat. The top table was now empty. Professor Dumbledore was dancing with Professor Sprout, Ludo Bagman with Professor McGonagall. Madame Maxime and Hagrid were cutting a wide path around the dance floor as they waltzed through the students, and Karkaroff was nowhere to be seen. When the next song ended, everybody applauded once more, and Harry saw Ludo Bagman kiss Professor McGonagall and make his way back through the crowds, at which point Fred and George accosted him. What do you think they're doing? Annoying senior ministry members? Percy hissed, watching Fred and George suspiciously. No respect. Ludo Bagman shook off Fred and George very quickly, however, and spotting Harry, waved and came over to their table. Hope my brothers weren't bothering you, Mr. Bagman, said Percy at once. What? Oh, not at all, said Bagman. No, they were telling me a bit more about those fake wands of theirs, wondering if I could advise them on the marketing. I promised to put them in touch with a couple of contacts of mine at Zongo's Joke Shop. Percy didn't look happy about this at all, and Harry prepared to bet he would be rushing to tell Mrs. Weasley about this moment the moment he got home. Apparently, Fred and George's plans had grown even more ambitious lately. If they were hoping to sell to the public. Beckman opened his mouth to ask Harry something, but Percy diverted him. So many names in this chapter, you try to keep them all straight. How do you feel the tournament's going, Mr. Beckman? Our department is quite satisfied. The hitch with the goblet of fire, he glanced at Harry, was a bit unfortunate, of course, but it seems to have gone very smoothly since, don't you think? Oh, yes, said Magman cheerfully. It's all been enormous fun. How's old Potsy doing? Shame he couldn't come. Oh, I'm sure Mr. Cratch will be up and about in no time, said Percy importantly. But in the meantime, I'm more than willing to take up the slack. Of course, it's not all attending balls. He laughed airily. Oh no, I've had to deal with all sorts of things that cropped up in his absence. You heard Ali Bashir was caught smuggling a consignment of flying carpets into the country? And then we've been trying to persuade the Transylvanians to sign the international ban on dueling. I've got a meeting with their head of magical cooperation in the new year. Let's go for a walk, Ron muttered to Harry. Get away from Percy. Pretending they wanted more drinks, Harry and Ron left the table, edged around the dance floor, and slipped out into the entrance hall. The front door stood open, and the fluttering fairy lights in the rose garden winked and twinkled as they went down the front steps, where they found themselves surrounded by bushes, winding ornamental paths, and large stone statues. Harry could hear splashing water, which sounded like a fountain. Here and there, people were sitting on carved benches. He and Ron set off along one of the winding paths through the rose bushes, but they had only gone a short way when they heard an unpleasantly familiar voice. Don't see what there is to fuss about, Eagle. Oh, wrong place. Don't see what there is to fuss about, Eagle. Severus, you cannot pretend this isn't happening. Karkaroff's voice sounded anxious and hushed as though keen not to be overheard. It's been getting clearer and clearer for months. I am becoming seriously concerned. I can't deny it. Then leave, said Snape's voice curtly. Leave. I will make your excuse. I, however, am remaining at Hogwarts. Snape and Karkaroff came around the corner. Snape had his wand out and was blasting rose bushes apart, his expression most ill-natured. Squeals issued from many of the bushes, and dark shapes emerged from them. 10 points from Ravenclaw, Fawcett. Snape snarled as a girl ran past him, and 10 points from Hufflepuff to 7. As the boy went rushing after her. And what are you two doing? He added, catching sight of Harry and Ron on the path ahead. Karkaroff, Harry saw, looked slightly discomposed to see them standing there. His hand went nervously to his goatee, and he began winding it around his finger. We're walking, Ron told Snape shortly. Not against the law, is it? Go, Ron. Keep walking, then. Snape snarled, and he brushed past them, his long black cloak billowing out behind him. Karkaroff hurried away after Snape. Harry and Ron continued down the path. Let's get Karkaroff all worried. Ron muttered. And since when have he and Snape been on first name terms? Asked Harry slowly. They had reached a large stone reindeer now, over which they could see the sparkling jets of a tall fountain. The shadowy outlines of two enormous people were visible on a stone bench, watching the water in the moonlight. And then Harry heard Hagrid speak. "Moment I saw you, I knew," he was saying in an oddly husky voice. Harry and Ron froze. This didn't sound like the sort of scene they ought to walk in on, somehow. Harry looked around, back up the path and saw Fleur Delacour and Roger Davies standing half concealed in a rose bush nearby. He tapped Ron on the shoulder and jerked his head toward them, meaning that they could easily sneak off that way without being noticed. Fleur and Davies looked very busy to Harry. But Ron, eyes widening in horror at the sight of Fleur, shook his head vigorously and pulled Harry deeper into the shadows behind the reindeer. "What did you know, Hagrid?" said Madame Maxime of her in her low voice. Harry definitely didn't want to listen to this. He knew Hagrid would hate to be overheard in a situation like this. He certainly would have. Yeah, me too, really. If it had been possible, he would have put his fingers in his ears and hummed loudly. But that wasn't really an option. Instead, he tried to entrance himself into a beetle crawling along the stone reindeer's back. But the beetle wasn't just interesting enough to block out Hagrid's next words. "Oh no, I know who that little beetle is, but I shall not spoil it. Moving on, I just knew you were like mice. Was it your mother or your father?" I don't know what you mean, Hagrid." "It was my mother," Hagrid said quietly. "It was one of the last ones in Britain. Of course, can't remember her too well. She left me when I was about 3. Wasn't really the maternal sort, but it's not in their natures, is it? Don't know what happened to her. Might be dead for all I know." Madame Maxime didn't say anything, and Harry, in spite of himself, took off his eyes off the beetle and looked over the top of the reindeer's antlers, listening. He had never heard Hagrid talk about his childhood before. "My dad was broken-hearted when she went down, a little bloke, my dad was. By the time I was 6, I could lift him up and put him on top of my dresser if he annoyed me. It used to make him laugh." Hagrid's deep voice broke. Madame Maxime was listening, motionless, but apparently staring at the silvery fountain. "Dad raised me, but he died, of course, just after I started school. Sort of had to make my own way after that. Dumbledore was a real help mine. Very kind to me, he was." Hagrid pulled out a large spotted silk handkerchief and blew his nose heavily. "So, anyway, enough about me. What about you? Which side you've got it on?" But Madame Maxime had suddenly got to her feet. "It's just chilly," she said. But whatever the weather was doing, it was nowhere as near as cold as her voice. "I think I will go in now." Said Hagrid blinking. "No, don't go. I've never met another one before." "Another what, precisely?" said Madame Maxime, her tone icy. Harry could have told Hagrid it was not best to answer. He stood in the shadows, gritting his teeth, hoping against hope he wouldn't, but it was no good. "Another giant, of course," said Hagrid. "Oh, damn you!" shrieked Madame Maxime. Her voice exploded through the peaceful night air like a foghorn behind him. Harry heard Ford and Roger fall out of the rose bush. "I have never been more insulted in my life. A giant! Moi! I have big bones! She stormed away. Great multicolored swarms of fairies rose into the air as she passed, angrily pushing aside bushes. Hagrid was still sitting on the bench, staring after her. It was too dark to make out his expression. Then, after about a minute, he stood up and strode away, not back to the castle, but off out into the dark grounds in the direction of his cabin. "Come on," said Harry. Harry said very quietly to Ron, "Let's go." But Ron didn't move. "What's up?" said Harry, looking at him. Ron looked around at Harry, his expression very serious indeed. "Did you know," he whispered, "about Hagrid being half-giant?" "No," Harry said, shrugging. "So what?" He knew immediately from the look Ron was giving him that he was once again revealing his ignorance of the wizarding world. Brought up by the Dursleys, there were many things that wizards took for granted that were revelations to Harry. But these surprises had become fewer with each successive year. Now, however, he could tell that most wizards would not have said, "So what?" upon finding out that one of their friends had a giantess for a mother. "I'll explain inside," Ron said quietly. "Come on." Bert and Roger Davies had disappeared, probably into a more private clump of bushes. Harry and Ron returned to the Great Hall. Parvati and Padma were now sitting at a distant table with a whole crowd of Beauxbaton boys, and Hermione was once more dancing with Ron. Harry and Ron sat down at a table far removed from the dance floor. "So," Harry prompted Ron, "what's the problem with giants?" "Well, they're not, they're, they're," Ron struggled for words. "Not very nice," he finished lamely. "Who cares?" Harry said. "There's nothing wrong with Hagrid." "I know there isn't, but blimey, no wonder he keeps it quiet," said Ron, shaking his head. "I always thought he got in the way of a bad engagement charm when he was a kid or something. Didn't like to mention it." "But what's it matter if his mother was a giantess?" said Harry. "Well, no one who knows him will care, 'cause they'll know he's not dangerous," said Ron slowly. "But Harry, they're just like vicious giants. It's like Hagrid said, it's in their natures. They're like trolls. They just like ending everyone. Everyone knows that. There aren't any left in Britain now, though." "What happened to them?" "Well, they were dying out anyway, and then those got themselves killed by oars. They're supposed to be giants abroad, though. They hide out in the mountains mostly. I don't know, I don't know who Maxime thinks she's kidding," Harry said, watching Madame Maxime sitting alone at the judge's table, looking very somber. "If Hagrid's half giant, she definitely is. Big bones. The only thing that's got bigger bones than her is a dinosaur." Harry and Ron spent the rest of the ball discussing giants in the corner, neither of them having any inclination to dance. Harry tried not to watch Cho and Chadwick too much. It gave him a strong desire to kick something. When the Weird Sisters finished playing at midnight, everyone gave them a last round of applause and started to head their way into the entrance hall. Many people were expressing the wish that the ball could have gone longer, but Harry was perfectly happy to be going to bed. As far as he was concerned, the evening hadn't been much fun. Out in the entrance hall, Harry and Ron saw Hermione sing goodnight to Crumb before he went back to the Durmstrang ship. She gave Ron a very cold look and swept past him in the marble staircase without speaking. Harry and Ron followed her, but halfway up the stairs, Harry heard someone calling him. "Hey, Harry!" It was Cedric Diggory. Harry could see Cho waiting for him in the entrance hall below. "Yeah?" said Harry coldly as Cedric ran up the stairs toward him. Cedric looked as though he didn't want to say whatever it was in front of Ron, who shrugged, looking bad-tempered, and continued to climb the stairs. "Listen," Cedric lowered his voice as Ron disappeared. "I owe you one for telling me about the dragons. You know that golden egg? Does yours well when you open it?" "Yeah," said Harry, "but take a bath, okay?" "What?" "Take a bath and, take the egg with you. And, just mull things over in the hot water. It'll help you think. Trust me." Harry stared at him. "Tell you what," Cedric said. "Here's the prefix bathroom. 4th floor to the left of that statue of Boris the Bewildered on the 5th floor. Password's Pine Fresh. Gotta go. Want to say goodnight." Harry grinned again and hurried back down the stairs to Cho. Harry walked back to Gryffindor Tower once. That had been extremely strange advice. Why would a bath help him to work out what the wailing egg meant? Was Cedric pulling his leg? Was he trying to make Harry look like a fool so Cho would like him even more by comparison? The fat lady and her friend Vi were snoozing in the picture over the portrait hole. Harry had to yell, "Fairy lights!" before he woke them up, and when he did, they were extremely irritated. He climbed into the common room and found Ron and Hermione in a blazing row. Standing 10 feet apart, they were bellowing at each other, each scar one in the face. "But if you don't like it, you know what the solution is, don't you?" yelled Hermione. Her hair was coming out of its elegant bun now, and her face was screwed up in anger. "Oh yeah? What's that?" Ron yelled back. "Next time there's a ball, ask me before someone else does, and not as a last resort." Ron mouthed soundlessly like a goldfish out of water as Hermione turned on her heel and stormed up the girls' staircase to bed. Ron turned to look at Harry. "Oh," he sputtered, looking thunderstruck. "Oh, that just proves. Completely missed the point." Ron didn't say anything. He liked being back on speaking terms with Ron too much to speak his mind right now. But he somehow thought that Hermione had gotten the point much better than Ron had. And that is the end to this very lengthy chapter. I hope you enjoyed it. Until next time, bye! And happy leap year.